You've got 2/3 of the American people wanting a public option. You just had 2/3 of Democrats in the in the Senate Finance Committee vote against it. What's the story?
Well, the story is that there's still a lot of work to be done in getting Democrats to realize that this is something that Americans want and that's vital to the goals of healthcare reform. I'm baffled by how Democrats can think that it is a good public policy to force Americans to buy private health insurance without giving them a good competitive option of a public plan. So a lot of these Democrats are ones that have been used to sort of digesting the elite, opinion on these issues, which says that government can't do anything right. And at the same time, they're getting a lot of money from private insurance industry interest and from hospitals, and they're just, I think, not inclined at this moment to sort of grasp the significance of this issue. But as Chuck Schumer said, when the vote went down to when the public plan that he put forth went down to defeat by a fairly narrow margin, this is only going to grow in support.
I mean, what is it about publicly financed and managed care that they don't get? I mean, Baucus, Lincoln, Conrad, they're all getting publicly insured health care.
Well, and the big argument that the Republicans have been making is that they need to protect and preserve Medicare, which is a public health insurance program. So
we'll talk about that debate a little, because Chuck Schumer did try to take Baucus and Grassley on around Medicare. And what exactly is the problem? How can you be both defending and scaremongering around the threat to Medicare and opposing the public option? What went down there?
Well, I think what went down is that the Schumer is really trying to point out that this is not some kind of radical idea, that this is not even allowing all Americans to buy into the Medicare program. It's simply creating a new public plan that would compete with private insurers, and people who were able to get coverage to these exchanges that would be created under the legislation would have the choice of enrolling in those plans. So I think what Schumer was trying to do was, he didn't expect Republicans to come on board, but to really point out the hypocrisy of saying that you're all for Medicare and at the same time being against a public plan, with Democrats, really trying to remind them that this is really about making the legislation work and about the core principles of the Democratic Party.
It is in the platform.
It's in the platform. It was in President Obama's campaign plank. It was in Max Baucus's November 2008 white paper for healthcare reform. And, Max Baucus's main argument against having the public plan lately has been that he doesn't think it will get 60 votes in the Senate. And, what kind of argument is this against doing something? It's, what does Max Baucus believe? It's not a principled position.
But there are a lot of people who are going to look at these votes, 15-8 rejecting the Rockefeller Amendment, slightly narrower margin rejecting the Schumer Amendment, and say exactly that. Well, it can't get through.
Well, they're wrong. I mean, it can happen in the Senate, and it certainly will happen in the House. And remember, there's two big issues, I think. One is we don't know yet whether or not this bill will be considered under normal Senate rules. There is a possibility that this will go to the budget process, which means that it only needs 50 votes. And most vote counters believe that the public plan already has 50 votes in the Senate, even if there's a more conservative Democratic contingent in the Finance Committee. And the second thing is that even if the Senate didn't pass a public plan, there would go to a conference committee with the House and the Senate, and that conference committee could put a public plan in. And the crucial question is, when it comes back to the floor of the Senate, are there Democrats who would be willing to support a Republican filibuster to block this legislation simply because it had a public plan? I think there are a lot of Democrats who say they don't like the public plan who would nonetheless be very wary of allowing this bill to go down to defeat over that one issue. I mean, Ben Nelson has he said he's against the public plan. He suggested, though, that he wouldn't support a filibuster that was simply over the public plan. So the real question is, will there be enough pressure put onto Democrats to ensure that the House comes out with a good public plan and that this remains a burning issue for Democrats through the process as it goes forward?
Well, one of the most concerning things that happened Tuesday was the Senate Majority Leader, Harry Reid, saying that the bill that he's going to pull out of these different options from the Senate is not going to include a public option. At least his staffers said that's his position.
Yeah, that was what was leaked to the press, and it is disappointing, but it should be kept in mind that this still could be offered as an amendment on the Senate floor, and certainly it will be offered as an amendment even if Reid doesn't include it. It is a little strange. I mean, remember, there are two committees here. Although the Finance Committee is the more preeminent committee, the fact is that the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee did include a public plan, and Senator Harkin, the new chair of the committee, has said that he thinks it's going to happen and he's going to be committed to making it happen.
Sherrod Brown also says he's going to be pushing hard.
Yes, and I think that even though Senator Rockefeller is the only senator who said he wouldn't support the Baucus bill outright when it was first introduced, there are a large number of progressive Democrats in the Senate who are absolutely committed to this goal and who don't believe that Senator Baucus's bill, which really has so many concessions and so many gifts to the insurance industry, is the right approach.
There is a bloc that had been forming in the last few months of Democrats who have pledged to refuse to support a health reform bill that did not include the public option, kind of the reverse of what you said before. How is that bloc holding steady?
It's holding very well on the House sides, and Speaker Pelosi believes strongly that she's got to have a public plan in there to get the support she needs. She's between a rock and a hard place in the sense that she has these more conservative blue dog Democrats to deal with as well. But all signs are that on the House side, Democrats have become more supportive of the idea of the public plan. And we should remember why that is. It's a crucial competitive check on private insurance plans, which are massively consolidated and in many parts of the country are dominating the market. Just one or two insurers are dominating the market. And two, it's a way of bringing down costs. And there's not a lot of other measures in these pieces of legislation that can really promise cost control.
Is there ever a moment when you think to yourself, Jacob, I wish we had just gone for single payer? Because I have to say, as a single payer supporter myself, I think, we could have been spending this time really advocating for something really clear, really dramatic, really politically on point that could show savings. And maybe it would have taken longer, maybe it would have been really hard, but we might have gotten more at the end of all this than your public option. I don't have that thought. I feel a lot of emotions as this debate has unfolded. Because you're touted as the architect of this public option.
Well, I was saying the other day that if it's my brainchild, I've been suffering a lot of brainchild abuse lately. But I feel a lot of emotions, and anger and despair are sometimes in the mix. Mostly, though, I remain pretty optimistic. First of all, we've gotten an enormous way with this debate so far. Second of all, we've had everything that could be thrown at health reform and the public plan thrown at it in August, and the bills are still standing. The Democrats are still committed to this goal. And third, I have a great deal of faith in the American people and the support they have for the public plan option. Now, do I think that a single-payer plan could pass in the current political climate? No, and I still believe that.
But you've just said we needed to do all this work to get us this far on public option, and we've been making progress. I think we could have been doing some of this work on single-payer and gotten an equivalent place maybe a year from now.
Well, I think where we agree is that Democrats, they have this debate. They push this debate forward every 15 years. And for the 10 or 12 years between, they don't talk about the vital role that health insurance that's provided by the government has in providing security for Americans. It is remarkable that you still can have people who will go to town hall meetings and say, keep government's hands off my Medicare. I mean, this is like Social Security. It's a bedrock part of our social fabric, and it's something the Democrats created. And we should, there's 2/3 Democratic majorities, Lyndon Johnson, that allowed this to come into being. And every day, Democrats should be reminding Americans that the reason we have a Medicare program that protects elderly Americans against the risk of ruinous medical costs is because Democrats pushed it through over Republican opposition.
You started at the beginning by saying, public option supporters shouldn't be discouraged; they should keep going. Yeah. What do you think happens next, and what do you advise people who really feel like their lives are in the balance here? What do you advise them to do?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say is that people should feel like their lives in the balance. This is the most important domestic policy issue we face right now, and there was a recent study that came out of Harvard that said that because of lack of universal coverage in the United States, we have 45,000 excess deaths each year in the United States. It's just striking. And so people who are engaged in this debate, all I can say is they have to get more engaged. Progressives in general have been far too passive as this debate has unfolded. It's been, conservative critics of the legislation that have dominated the discussion. It will only happen if that changes, and I see the signs that it's changing. I think that if if we have a vigorous debate in favor of having a public plan as a choice for Americans in a new reform system, that we will win that debate. And so I think that the most important thing that people can do, right, is to say that there are just two key principles in this debate, right? You have to ask two questions, right? Does this provide affordable coverage for all Americans? And that is the first thing. And does it create accountability for insurance companies? And you can't have one without the other. And we don't have accountability in the framework that has been put forth by Senator Baucus. We don't have accountability without a competing public plan.